how first of all, how you got to the Caribbean, for where you come from, before we get on to talking about horses, because I've always really wondered myself. So why don't you tell us who you are, where you're from, and how you came to end up on St. Vincent and the Grenadines?
Yes. Well, I'm Stina, and I was originally born in Norway. I'm 45.
Norway,
yeah, so my nationality is Norwegian, but at 21, I started to work with development work. So I worked in Africa. I've been traveling a lot around the world, working also different countries, Europe and United States. So I have been involved in development work and education for many years, and I always at the side had a passion for horses. So there was a job opportunity here in the Caribbean in 2007, and then me and my husband, we decided to come over here and take the challenge of running a development and education project here. And when I arrived here, we started to look for horses because I wanted to have horses in my life. And yeah, that's a little bit on how I got here.
Okay, so you've always worked with horses then, or you've just been fond of horses and so on?
Well, I have I started, I guess, as many horse girls around 8, 9, 10 years, found some horses in Norway, Icelandic horses. Later on, I trained trotters for racing. And later on, I learned Western riding. I did some jumping. And when I was working in Denmark for a while, I got into academic, we call it academic dressage, a lot of groundwork with horses, and then I combined that with clicker training. And I took a lot of horsemanship courses. So I have, besides my work, I've always done a lot of work with horses, and especially when I was in Denmark before coming here, I worked with very troubled horses, horses that were going for slaughter, or very aggressive horses, and I worked with using the natural methods to, you could say, heal them. You know, yeah.
Okay, so obviously, as you say, when you then got to the island, you wanted to try and make contact with horses again, and it sounds like you just came across the herd in the middle of the jungle there. Is that right?
Well, kind of. It was actually so that I was looking for horses, and there is a guy on this island who's a very nice person who has a beautiful herd of horses, who had sold 2 of his horses to a person we were going to find because he didn't want the horses anyway. So I thought, oh, that sounds like 2 good horses to start with. 4-year-old, born in a good family with a very good man and so on. But we never found these 2 horses. And then by a detour, we ran into an abandoned and a pretty abused herd that has been bumming wild for 10 years up a valley. There are some houses there, so people were also living there. So it was a trouble that they didn't really have a place to be. And they were walking around where also people didn't want them. Yeah, so they were just basically been bumming there for about 10 years.
And so how big was the herd when you found them?
8 horses.
And they literally just been living off their own wits, you're guessing, for about 10 years in the jungle.
Yeah, they had, actually those who set this up, I don't know too much about the story because there's a lot of stories. I don't know which one is really more accurate. But in the end of the 90s, some people set up a riding center, an equestrian center in that valley. And for whatever reasons, the owners had to leave the country. And in the end of so since the end of the 90s, the horse herd was left. But there's also many stories centered around how they were left because they were corralled. They were in an enclosure where actually 9 horses died. And these horses here, I'm guessing that 2 or 3 of my horses have been part of that because they're older. And the young ones have been born after. And also because 3 of the herd that I got up here, they have been very, very troubled in their minds. So they were carrying a lot of trouble with them, while the young ones are very open, you know. Yeah. Mm.
And they were in very poor condition, I remember.
Yeah, they're very poor condition. Some of them were not that thin, but most of them are very thin, very much due to worms. because horses are made for dry climate, you know. They are not originally, you can say, genetically made for hot tropical rainforest. That's not, you know, how they're made. So if you don't take care of them with deworming and, you know, keep the pastures well, and they get a lot of parasites and worms here. So they were very full of worms, so obviously they'd taken a lot of the nutrition. So, and also because they were always kind of chased away because they wouldn't know where to eat, right? So they would grab a little bit of a lawn here and people would throw stones at them to get them away. And that's not because people in St. Vincent are especially aggressive, but it is simply because they're afraid. And, you know, if you have loose animals walking around and you don't know what to do with them, you can't catch them, there's no one making a system and so on. So they've just been horses in the way that no one could really get a hold of or do anything with. Yeah, mostly because they were not able. You know, there's not many people in this country who know about horses.
And so what made you decide to take them on? I mean, because obviously you went looking for 2 horses, which you didn't get, and you ended up with 8. I guess you had to take them as a job lot, didn't you?
Yeah, I think we discussed a lot what to do, but somehow... I don't know, we were looking at them and we met them, it was of course a little bit crazy to say yes because, you know, I have no experience with wild horses and not that many and you know. But somehow when we saw them and their condition and how they troubled the people as well, you know, that it would just really be a great solution for everyone if we just take all of them. So in a way, the heart and some logic and a bit of craziness said that, okay, let's try to take all of them. And then, of course, I had no idea what I said yes to. Absolutely no idea. And
so it was kind of a joint decision within the academy or the organization you work for?
Yeah, I guess especially my husband, because he knew this is going to take a little bit of time, you know. So, but we agreed that we were going to take them, and we thought that, of course, again, we had no idea what we were talking about, but we thought it would be great to have trail horses for our nature and hiking center, because we have tourists coming here to our island, and they enjoy the nature, and then we raise money from tourists to do development work. So we thought, oh, that could be a good idea to have horses to do trail rides. So that was our idea. So in a way we thought, well, it could fit into what we were doing. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, all right. So how did you get them to live around the center where you work? Was it just natural because they went where the food was, or you were providing care for them?
No,
how did you
we have
encourage them?
We set up fences. But when we were going to catch them or capture them, that was very difficult. I mean, we were many people, and I think it was horrible, because we had to force those horses up on the truck to get them here, you know. But in the end, I was thinking, okay, well, it can only get better for these horses. So we got them captured. You could say we forced them up on the truck. And, you kind of round up on the truck and so on. Got them up here, and then we had set up fences. And then they had to learn how to respect fences. We had current, like electrical fence. So they had to learn that within this area you can live. You can't bum around wherever you want. It doesn't work, you know, for no one. Not for them and not for people around. Yeah.
Okay, so you had to kind of persuade them to live within the fences, but because they were getting good care, they were kind of happy to go along with it, that sort of thing?
Yeah, because what I noticed when they came here is that no one bothered them, you know. We had fenced in huge areas. So they finally could settle. We separated the mares. There were 2 stallions and mares. So we separated them, 1 stallion each place, and the mares, they could see each other, but we had to separate them. As also we were not interested in having more horses, obviously. We thought we were going to have 2. So then we set that up, and actually the horses were very quiet for months. There was no speaking, no interaction. And there was kind of, you know, these eyes where they're kind of gone. So that took quite a lot of time. But they were just at peace. Somehow they knew that now I have this area and here I can eat and there will be water in the corner and so on. So I think actually they really liked that, but they were missing all this kind of life that you see in happy horses, you know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then you decided that you were going to, after you sort of got them back to, you know, they got used to being in this fenced off area and could tell that they were sort of being looked after. Obviously, that was alien concept to them, but you know, they'd gone from having stones thrown at them to sensing that, of course, things were now different. And so you then decided you wanted to try and train them and make a connection with them, right?
Yes. So we started out. Yeah, go ahead. I think you have another question.
Yeah. So my point was, I guess my question was, because you had done lots of horse work and training and studied different people and so forth, I was just wondering what made you therefore look outside of, you know, what you currently experienced.
No, yeah, it was interesting. I think sometimes you learn to listen to your heart, because I had worked a lot with horses before, and I've also gotten a little older. Oh, not that old, but you know, I was thinking, how is it that we could agree about what we're doing? You know, I'm a very busy woman. I'm leading a project with a lot of people and so on. And then when I have time with my horses, I would really like it to be a pleasure for me and, of course, for the horses. So I was really looking forward to spend time with the horses in the afternoon and start some exercises, some horsemanship, whatever. But anything that I suggested to do with the horses, they were just not happy with my company. And I would actually say that I'm kind of gentle, even though before I learned these new ways, that I was, you know, I guess more careful and gentle than many traditional methods, but still my approaches were just not welcome. So I was happily walking over to my horses and, oh, I'm going to be with my horses. And then they looked at me like almost disgusted, you know, and I thought, oh my goodness, what am I doing here? And so I thought, I better look for some new methods, because even just putting a halter on or I don't know, they were so skeptic, and I thought, in a way, this is not going to work. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll just make a wild horse sanctuary. People come and look at horses and they go again. But in a way, I thought, oh, there must be a way, because after some time, I was pretty sure the horses could learn that I had good intentions, and I was frankly very interested to find a program that we could agree about doing. Yeah, so that set me off looking for how can I connect with these horses. There must be a way. So I searched and searched and searched and wrote to a lot of people, because there's no horsemanship trainers on the island, so I also couldn't get a second opinion on what I was trying to do. So then when I wrote to a lot of people, I was very happy to hear I found Carolyn Resnick in The Path of the Horse. So I'm so grateful for that movie, because I think so many people have found new answers and new ways of doing things because Stormy May has made that movie. So, and it's available to us in trailers online. So I could contact all these different people, and then Carolyn responded, and then we started to talk about what to do.
Okay, whoa. Okay, so let's just back up there a second. So you first came across the Path of the Horse. Okay, yeah. So how did you come across that?
Search on YouTube. I search horsemanship, I think. I search speaking with horses, searching connection with horses, friendly methods, something like that. I kept searching for what I could do, because the horsemanship that I knew didn't work.
Right. And so you kept, presumably you came across other videos, but you watched them and you weren't attracted to them, or they didn't seem right to you, or?
Yeah, it's because I have done a lot of more traditional horsemanship with a rope halter and a long rope, where again, you always have captured the horse. So in a way, even though you're very gentle and ask the horse, you still have him on a rope, on a leash, right? So you will still capture the horse. So the horse cannot get away from you, even though you're not pulling or you're not arguing, you're not, So still, even though you're very, very gentle horseman and you have a rope halter or ordinary halter or just a neck rope, whatever, you have the horse on a leash. So that's the horsemanship that I knew. And the difference was with Caroline's methods is that you don't do that. You start with a horse free, and that was a very new aha for me. Oh.
So, because obviously in the path of the horse, there are several different trainers, obviously not just trainers, but a mixture of horse people, but there are different trainers there. So was it the sort of lack of ropes? What was it that attracted you to Caroline as opposed to any of the other trainers on there?
No, I think it's she answered.
Oh, right.
I mean, I think she answered fastest. The other ones also answered, and other people outside part of the horse, but they answered. But she actually answered, and you could say sometimes, you meet people, and you just kind of connect. You write and they write back, or you talk and they talk back, and you get like a tone. We both thought this was very interesting somehow.
Yeah, because obviously she can't travel much nowadays, so to train remotely was obviously something she could do, and I guess was an interesting challenge for her and for you, really, because you weren't able to travel much from the island, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so how did that?
Yeah.
So how did all that develop then? Were you just writing back and forth?
Yeah, mostly writing emails. In the beginning, I sent her a couple of times photos. That's before I learned how to do the YouTubes. But we sent photos because this is now almost, it's 5 years ago. So then, because she said to me that I should not put any halter on, not put any rope on, and just sit down where the horses are. And just that she told me that was like, wow. I don't know why, but I thought it was a really wow, that you're not going to chase after that horse. You're not going to capture that horse. You're going to wait for that horse to come to you. Yeah, I guess, I don't know if I lost the thread, but I was going to sit down and do that, and then we wrote about that, what happened.
Okay, so she gave you some instructions, and you would you carry them out, maybe take the odd photo, but then just report back your findings via email. Yes.
Basically, that's how it went.
I mean, it's an amazing story, really, and for people listening, I'm sure they can sort of imagine that it was going to take an awful long time, and just in the writings. I know Caroline, of course, has trouble writing. She's dyslexic, that's all. And so it must have been tricky for her to write instructions and tricky for you to describe what was going on. It sounds like a very long, drawn-out process, but in a way, that's the beauty of Caroline's method, in that it does, it's meant to be taken slowly.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and I think I was also very ready for that because, again, I'm not going to fight with my pets or my friends or my animals or, I'm not up for fighting. I'm done with that. It must be a way we can communicate, and so that when we see each other, whether it's a horse or whether I meet you, Mark, I will say, oh, it's nice to meet you. Let's have a coffee or, So it's really nice to meet each other. So I was so ready to change my program and change my approach, so that when I met my horses, they would actually say a whinny or say, whoa, there's she coming, how nice, So I was ready to do also, any suggestion to see how could we connect and, have a good time. And then I was surprised how long time it took, because then I read Caroline's book, and then I was thinking, oh, is it really true, Is it really possible? Can I do this then? But I read her book, and somehow it was very logic to me. So her book resonated a lot to me. And then I kept sitting there because I was just sitting in that horse field for I don't know how many weeks, trying to believe that it is true that the horses were going to come up to me. And actually, in the end, they did. And I thought it's almost unbelievable. But I kept sitting there. Because anyway, I was not going to do anything with the horses because I'm out of all this force thing, I'm going to decide over you thing. I was done with that. So the only thing else I could do was to sit there, right? So so then in the end it worked. And I was so happy because they started to take contact. They didn't mind me coming around. And then they started off to find it a little bit interesting when I came around. And they started to find out, what can we use Stina for? So I'm not saying that they sent me up in the fruit trees, but somehow they looked at the fruits and they looked at me and they could see I could climb up there. So we started to, give them some fruits from the fruit trees. Yeah. So.
But you think the real, because you were waiting, you had the time and you were willing to invest the time, plus, the time it took to write back and forth. You were just spending time with them and not really doing anything. And of course, having read Carolyn's book, which suggests that people do that, that's in fact what you did.
Yeah,
so,
I was just waiting for them to contact me, simply, yeah.
And did you think it would happen?
Oh, well, in the beginning, I don't know. I was like back and forth every day, I think, So in a way, I was also, when you do something, you think other people will think it's funny. So I was thinking, how am I going to do this? Because everybody was asking me, Stina, you have all these horses. When are you going to ride them? So I got all these questions. What are you doing with your horses? And then in the end, I made up stories. So I said, they're so wild and they are so sick. Yeah, so we can't work with them yet, So then I walked in the middle of the fruit garden. We had this old orchard. We fenced in this orchard. And then I was a little bit hiding in the middle there. I brought my chair and my book. And then I was just sitting there. And then I got out of all this question, why are you not doing anything with your horses? Because after trying to explain to them that I'm going to try something new, and they couldn't understand what I was talking about. And then I thought, and then I just said, they're not healthy, and we just leave them for a while. And then I went to sit in the middle of the horse herd, or in the middle of the fruit garden, waiting for the horses to come to me. And that's how it happened. Because people always think, what are you going to do with them? What are you going to do? What are you going to do next? And what did you do this and this? When are you going to ride them? And that's like, now I'm going to try something new. I don't care how long time it takes, and let's give it the time and then see what happens. So I was hiding in the fruit garden.
So you were just hanging out and wait for it to happen. And there's a question coming from Catherine, who says from VA, Powhatan, VA. Is that Virginia, Vermont? No, it can't be Vermont. Virginia, right? Anyway, she says, I'm waiting to take Carolyn's online class. As someone who has used her methods, is there anything I can do with my horses to prepare me and them for her classes? Would you do anything different? So you possibly may have just answered the first question. Is there anything she can do to prepare?
Yeah, I would simply go out and sit in the chair and not do anything, and then observe your horse. Try to observe, try to find out so what's going on in that horse's mind, what are they thinking about, and try to observe the interactions, try to study horses. So it was very good for me to get out of that, what am I going to do, but to go back to school, you can say. Go back to school and say, okay, I'm a student here. What can I learn from the horse? And what can I learn from observing the horse? Because none of the horse courses I ever took before, none of the clinics I've been in, taught this to me, that sit down and study the horse. How are they speaking? What are they doing? How are they eating? How many hours are they eating? How are they interacting? Who interacts with who? When do they not want to interact with each other? And so on. And observe. I simply go back to be a student. And I think that maybe that could help. Yeah.
Yeah, good. And so do you think, obviously people, if you said to people, okay, you must just spend the first month or two sitting with your horse, people are going to naturally think nowadays that it will be a waste of time. Why aren't you getting on with training?
I think you should go ahead and watch.
You're just wasting time.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, well, what I could say to that is that I think you perhaps would like to take a few minutes and watch some of my videos, and then maybe one would say, oh, well, maybe those 3 months spent sitting will actually, if it could get me to this result, and I like this result, or I like what I see, then maybe I like to invest the time. So I think that one could look at some of us to do this method and enjoy it, to see, okay, that's what they do with their horses, this is their relationship. And if one likes that, then we say, well, okay, you've got to put in the time. That's, I don't know.
I've always had the suspicion that it's actually quicker to spend that 3 months and build the relationship than not. Do you see what I mean?
I
Would you agree with that?
Totally, because now we start to ride. Well, last year we started waterhole rituals under saddle, and that's been amazing. So this first year here, we have had 3 horses getting used to riders, and it's just been such a nice journey. So in connection, so in agreement. We all think it's been really nice, and so I think it's become all a pleasure. No fear, no fight, no worries. Well, not that it's all, we're not like living in heaven here either. That's not what I mean. But I mean, it's been a very nice journey in agreement with the horse. So you feel good after each session,
And so do they, right?
Yeah, so do they. Because the thing is that they always lose. So if you bring the saddle and they walk away, we did something wrong. So repair and start again. So they always lose. You bring the saddle, you bring the halter or bitless halter, whatever you use, and then if you bring it and the horse walk away, you got the answer right there. And you don't have to worry.
And
if it's good or not good or good or not good, you don't have to worry, because your horse will always tell you if you're doing right or if you're doing wrong. If you're doing wrong, it's simply going to walk away. And then you have to say, oh, so what do we do?
Yeah. If anybody would like to ask a question, there's the box on the web page there. If you can stick your question in there, we'll be trying to answer it for you. If you're listening in on the telephone, and there are a few people who are, then you can press star 2 on your telephone keypad to ask a question in person, if you're bold enough. Dare you do that. Okay, so let's go back to the Q&A. Susan's written in from Santa Fe saying, Stina, I've been following your amazing progress as a Carolyn Resick instructor, and so happy to hear your voice in the continuation of your journey. And so that goes along with the one we had from Nancy and also Ruella. So thank you for your comments, everyone. Okay, so you're saying that recently you've been moving on to riding. So is there, had these horses been ridden before at all?
I'm guessing that, this is just guessing, right? I'm guessing that my lead mare has had someone on her back, been ridden kind of like a donkey or so. This is a guess from like 10 years ago. But the other ones, I would really think no, because of their, because of their reaction and everything else we've been doing.
Mm-hmm. And what has been their reaction?
Well, because we have done the waterhole ritual so, you can say thoroughly and so long time, because I personally just really enjoy playing with the waterhole rituals. I think it's a lot of fun. So I've done that a lot, maybe more than, I don't know what's usual, but I've just done it a lot. And then when I started riding, it was just so step by step. So you would put the blanket on, and then you would, make sure the horse smelled the blanket. Is that okay? You put the blanket on the horse, each side, and if everything's okay, maybe you will show them the girt, and you will try to not tighten the girt, but have it around. If that's okay, maybe you move on that day, maybe you don't. So they have been so responsive and accepting to everything we have asked them, and it's because the trust is there. So when I show them a saddle, or I show them a blanket, or we stand on a chair, so we're higher than them. We stand on a chair on each side, so they have something high on each side. Because the trust is so founded, the trust is so grounded. then I would they are not afraid or they are not worried, you know. It's like if I went to Belize once and I went as a tourist into one of those caves. You know, when you go through a cave, it's kind of like a tour. It's quite exciting and a little bit nervous, right? But because the person who is the guide and because your friend who convinced you to go there, they say, I've done it before. It's okay, you know, let's try and we can just stop and take a break and don't worry, you know, I'll hold your hand and so on. So in that way, I walked through that cave in Belize and it was, you know, very exciting. But if my friend hadn't done it before and I trusted that friend, you'd never get me in there. So I think it's because it's so bounded. The trust is so basic. Yeah. That's why I think riding is. Yeah, go ahead.
And what about the couple of horses that you said you could tell had been sort of abused?
Yeah, I had, but that we have kind of what you could say before we start riding. With two of them, we have fixed that during the waterhole rituals. But I still have one mare that has been troubled. So I have, you could say, actually waited for her for 5 years. But I don't know how long it's going to take her. But in a way, I don't really care either because it will happen also when she's watching the other horses get more into things. So those two of those who have been very troubled, we have gained all trust through the waterhole ritual. And then I still have one that I'm starting to connect more with her now. That's going to be one I'm going to work with this fall and this spring. So that's going to be quite exciting because also I don't have that much time. So I also just let her be. Her name is Spirit, and I just let her be. I never in my life met such a frightened horse. Never, ever. I had no idea horses could be so afraid. So I don't know what they've done to her, but, you know, she's just been so skeptical. She's, of course, much less skeptical now, but now I feel that I am ready and to approach her more. So it's been my training. I needed to have more training to work with her. So I've just let her be. But I feel that I am ready now. Maybe that's more that I'm ready than that the horse is ready, you know.
Right. And somebody, who was it that was asked here? Nancy has asked. She says, isn't it possible that the horse will, some horses will always say no to a saddle?
Yeah,
what do you think?
Guess so. Yeah, I guess so. Some would. It would be good to maybe look into why it would be, because maybe if they were ridden wrong and ridden with the wrong saddle and then that it's just so strong in them. You know, some people I have here, if we're going to go down and learn how to swim, if one had a bad experiences, it's just they can't get over that. They're just not going to swim. And then you could focus on the swimming all the time, or you could just say, oh, let's just drop swimming. We can walk up to our knees in the water in the river instead, or we could do something else. So if you have a horse that's just, you know, just don't want that saddle on, maybe you could do something else, walk the horse or...
Yeah. Catherine is from Virginia. She's just written in again, and she was saying she comes from a dressage background, and of course, when you try to do anything different there, or you know, if you don't use harsh training methods, she says you tend to get alienated, and you know, you're frowned upon. But she's always tried to learn and do different things, and she says, what have you done to remain strong and confident in doing something different with your horses? I suspect you didn't really have the pressure to conform that she faces, because you know there's not many horse people out in St. Vincent of the Grenadines, right? Yeah,
I think that's a very good question. Anyway, thanks for your comments and the questions that you're asking, because it helps me to learn how to explain about what I'm doing. So that question, I could say that for my horses now, I was hiding in the fruit garden, so nobody stopped asking questions. They couldn't see what I was doing. They couldn't see that I was doing nothing, and that was the training, or so-called training. But before, when I was in Denmark, when I didn't heal horses like with my hands or anything about me, but what I did was that I set up paddock paradise, and I took in horses that were really troubled, and then you give them a year where they fix their hoof. You have a barefoot trimmer come in. You make sure they eat a lot of hay and not much grain. You make sure they have company and a lot of movement and can move all the time. So in this way, I have not healed the horses heal themselves. It's not me who heal them. They heal themselves because you set up how they are able to heal themselves. So in a way, when I did some of this in Denmark, a lot of so-called alternative stuff, I've had also a lot of people looking at me like organizing the first barefoot seminar in my area and so on. But I so strongly believe after reading and seeing the examples of the transformation in the horses, and I could see that for the horses I worked with, it was really good for them. So in the end, I couldn't care less what everybody else was thinking because I could see the transformation in the horse. So I guess that's when I went, you could say, did alternative ways in Denmark. I think at the end of the day, people can have a lot of opinions. Oh, I think this, oh, I think that. Well, that's all wonderful, but what works, what works for you and your horse, what works for you in that situation, and take it from there. Because at the end of the day, I think if you're looking for this way of being the horses, I think it's so simple because either the horse will stay with you or the horse will walk away, and then you will always say, okay, so do I want to force that horse or I don't want to force that horse? So I don't know. I think you have to, I don't know. And then sometimes, I always say you have to follow your heart. You simply have to follow your heart. And sometimes it helps to hook up with a couple of other people who think paddock paradise is interesting, or Hensling or Nosorov or Kathy Pike or Carolyn Resnick is interesting, or hook up with some people who tried some new herbs or tried to do some, I don't know, something different with horses, so that you have someone you can talk to about that. It's quite interesting to try new things instead of only talking to people who think you should do what you always have done and what they always have done, because then, then you have something. Some people are just more open. So try to find some people who are more open that you can discuss your new ideas with, so you don't feel so alone about approaching new ways. Yeah, I hope that could help.
Yeah, good idea. Okay, how about this one? Michelle's written in from North Bend. Yeah, you guys are going to have to put the states. I don't know the states. West Virginia? I don't know. Wisconsin? WA, anyway. Apologies for my ignorance for not knowing that. How much would you say the interaction with your horses depends on a reliable stream of treats at this stage in your relationship? Have you tapered off using treats, or how have you handled that?
Oh, that's a good question. Because in the beginning, when I was sharing territory, there was just no treats. There was nothing about treats. Then when I started to interact more with the horses, so in Carolyn's method, it is we do something called leading from behind, eye contact. We do some kind of a system how we learn how to speak horse. Then I added treats. And then in the beginning, I had brought my clicker training background with me, so I had the treats on me, where I later on learned that for what I want to achieve, it don't work for me anymore. And that's also more of, you could say, Carolyn Resnick method, to keep the treats outside the fence. So in the beginning, then when I finally got to interact with the horses, I think I used too much treats, so then some of my horses got their treats fixed, thinking about the tricks, and I was like, then I realized that. So sometimes you just realize that you're doing the wrong thing. And then I said, okay, well, that's not the relationship I want. I don't want, for example, Mark to call me every time I got my salary. So every time at the end of the month, I get a paycheck, and that's when Mark calls to say, what are we going to do? So then I'm not very interested in Mark's friendship, or if he's just calling me when I got my salary, right? So then I actually took away, well, of course, Mark, you wouldn't do that, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, you never know.
You never know. No, but then I said no. Then I took off a lot of the treats again and used very little. And then I started to only keep them outside the fence. So it was not so then I changed it again. But I think this question, you will have maybe 10 different answers to yourself. And I think this is what worked for me. Then today I can have that really good bonding and connection in a dance, in a lot of movement, and a lot of things where I have no treats at all. But I think what works for you and your horse, you have to find out by, I don't know, using a lot, using little, using in this moment, not in this moment. Yeah, so I think but that's how it was for me. Today I use a lot of treats, but then I never have them on me. And very often I just don't use any. Yeah. I don't know.
Okay.
Hope that answers, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, of course, Michelle's query was based on the fact that she's not sure whether the horse's interest is in her or the carrots.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Yeah.
So
how much is the interaction and how much is it reward? So
yeah, but then on the other, but then let's say just with common sense, okay? Of course, horses and people are not the same, right? But there's a lot of similarities anyway, especially when you get to work in this way. But let's say, what do humans do when we're together? So if I invite Mark over, usually to my house, I would have some tea. Maybe I'll have some biscuits. When people go out, we go out to eat. We share territory, and we do something together. And we eat something. Often I will have a candy bag, or I will ask, would you like a treat? So treats doesn't have to be, it depends on how you use the treats, because humans to humans, we use, if you can call it, treats all the time. So, but it depends on how you use them, because if you're staring at me when I gave you one treat and you're only staring at my candy bag, I'll say, get out of here, right? But we have established a certain system or rituals or way of being together that when Mark sits down at the coffee table, he will have a cup of coffee and he will take one cookie. He's not going to, take 20, right? So we have established a system how it's nice to share food, how it's nice to share treats, and I don't know, and I really think this we can do with the horse. So it is around, respect and how we do this together. Because a lot of interaction is centered around food, eating. The lead mare is always in charge or responsible for that everybody can eat. In the horse herd, it's a lot about where can we eat, when can we eat, who can eat with who. The lead mare would lead to a new place where you can eat. Yeah, I don't know if this helps.
Okay. Well, if it doesn't, folks, then you know what to do.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yes, Michelle says, that was a great answer, thanks. I've been tapering off with them and sometimes not giving him any, and some days he's into me and some days he's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, so. Okay, Susan writes in, have you said that your horses don't require trimming on the island. Do you feel that is a result of the environment there, or have you worked with their feet to get them to this self-corrective stage? Yeah, that's a good question. I think the way that I can keep my horses in self-trim is because I'm very lucky to have a hilly area with amazing trees that drop some nuts called gugu trees. So I know that I couldn't set that up in Denmark or in Norway, right? I could have done something different. But this makes the horses move a lot. So in this area, there's not a lot of food, but there's always something to chew on, and they will always wander around to get these nuts that drops a little here, drops a little there. So they walk a lot in this hilly area, and they have a lot of movement. So in that way, they self-trim their hooves. I am not a hoof expert or anything. I've done some courses, theory, which is far away from knowing how to do this in practice. But from what I can see is that the hooves look pretty okay, yeah? I don't know how, so in that way they are in self-trim, and I think their hooves look okay. Their angles are good, their frogs are good, and so on. So I think that this setup could be copied to other places, but you would find another way to have your horses move around so much. For example, you put up like feeding automates that just drops a little bit of grain in this corner, drops a little bit of grain in that corner. So they will always kind of move around to find that little to eat. That's not too much, not too little, yeah?
if I'd lived in Denmark or US or somewhere else, I would have really tried to find a way I could set up so the horses are moving so much in their area so they self-trim their hooves. So I put them out on grassy fields a number of hours per day, depending on how fat they are or how thin they are. So either they will graze for 8, 9, 10 hours and then go in and walk in that area and just chew on stuff. And that's how I regulate their feed and their trim. They have never been trimmed. There's no trimmers on the island. And I don't know how to trim. A theory course can't make you trim, so I haven't done any of that. They have not been filed anything. Yeah.
Okay. I hope that answers the question, but if not, then obviously...
Ask more, yeah.
I'll ask again, yeah. Okay, so we're coming to the end of our time together, and it's flown by. I hope everyone's enjoyed it, and we've got a nice number on the call here, and rather alarming. There's some people, more people coming on all the time, which might mean everyone else maybe it was me who got the time wrong. And anyway, glad you can join us. So any last questions, then just drop them in the Q&A box, and we'll try and get them answered. Okay, so what are the plans for you now? I mean, obviously, you've really progressed in your training with Caroline's method, and you're now offering you're offering courses and sort of combination courses on the island there, aren't you?
Yeah. So we have people who come for like a horsemanship vacation, so they will enjoy the nature and the hiking, and they will combine that with taking some lessons with me, and then they choose their topic. I have some working students here who are here on the longer term, like 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And then what we're working on now is that we've made our first 20 videos. We made the videos of how we started the first 3 horses. So then we are making another 20 videos during this next year. Maybe we could even make more. But we will see kind of how it goes. I've just got a new working student here, so we will start filming again. So that's what's going on here. And then I do a couple of clinics a year in Europe when I go to see my family in Norway. I sometimes stop. I could stop in Germany and go to Norway, or I could stop in England, go to Norway. I could do something like that. But otherwise, I don't do many clinics abroad because, time, you only have the time you have. So that's basically, you could say, what's going on right here. And if it's interesting for you at HorseConscious, then we could perhaps do a follow-up call in half a year or something where we focus more on how did we apply the waterfall rituals on the saddle, or maybe other questions. I don't know. I have a lot of ideas on sustainable horsekeeping as well.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that, and we didn't even get around to talking about it, did we?
No, not that much. It could be, it could be for another call, or, so.
Well, why don't you just, we've got a few minutes left now, so why don't you just, give us a couple of minutes worth on that.
Yeah. Well, you see, I've found it very interesting because, we're running a non-profit here, and we have started a program this year to protect the environment in St. Vincent, because this island is incredibly beautiful. I mean, people are wonderful. It is a treasure. That's how I have it with this place. I love it here. And then there's a lot we can do to help to protect the nature. So what we have been doing is that besides we're creating like a model. So as we're doing a lot of development work, what I wanted to say is that we need to not spend a lot of money on keeping horses. So I've always tried to put up, how do we not spend money on the horses? That doesn't mean that I don't care about them, but how is it, if you have 7 horses, you need to have a budget. We also have 3 donkeys, So then to set up a sustainable horsekeeping, then you say, so how can we use less money on food but give them good food? So we have set up this with the grass pastures that we have done now, that they're out eating an amount of grass, but that's not enough. So we have to have different areas where they can pick the herbs they want. So we have some fields where there's more variety of herbs, because if the horse needs something, he or she will go find it, if they are able to get that space to go around and find it. So that's one thing. So, and then we have set up the pastures so we don't use any money for trimmers. Well, of course, there are no trimmers here, so we kind of had to, but you could look into that where you are. Then we remove the compost, we call it compost, but the manure every day to make fertilizer, compost for our organic garden. So the horses live right around our organic garden, so we collect all the manure. And when you collect all the manure every day, you also do parasite control. So if you can find a way to collect all the manure, it depends on, your whole setup, how it works for you. But this is what we've done. We collect all the manure to make the compost. And the latest thing we're doing here is that we are growing dewormers. Oh, doesn't that sound interesting? And that means that to grow papaya. Papaya grows a lot here, and the papaya seeds are very good for cleaning intestines and cleaning out parasites. So over the next year, I hope to be able to document that we can get out of chemical dewormers and use natural dewormers that we can grow here. And then I'm pretty sure that this can be applied to other places, because you can grow something else somewhere else to have a natural dewormer. And then we have just started to collect rainwater off the shelter of the horses. So we do not give public water anymore. Public water has added chlorine, and public water costs money, more or less, depending on where you live. And to be sustainable, you need to harvest the water and then give your horses rainwater. So that's something we've just accomplished, to collect all rainwater for the horses, and then we will see how we will go about growing dewormer. But at this point, I don't know if it's going to work. But let's see. Follow me over a year, and then I will try to document to say that now we're out of the because we use now dewormer that we buy from the vet, and then I will see if I can use less of that, more of papaya seeds, and see if it can work. And maybe it can't work on all the horses. Maybe it can work on some of them. I don't know. But I find this very interesting to experiment with.
Indeed. And how did you come across that? I mean, is that something you read about, or the dewormer?
Yeah. There's a herbal woman here in St. Vincent who used that on her cows.
Oh, right. Okay.
Works on her cows.
And you think there'll be other local remedies, if you like, depending on where people live and what grows naturally?
I think so. In a combination with that, you collect all the manure. I think you must collect the manure from the horse field. Because the thing is with these wild horses, right? They have all their wild instincts. They are tame, but they have the wild instincts. So they only dump their manure in certain areas. They have toilets. So it's very unnatural for horses to eat around any of their own manure. I mean, which is kind of logic when we think about it. Of course, you don't eat around your toilet, right? You have your dinner table somewhere else. And horses have the same. So that's why I really think that there are many ways to go about this. But you can't just grow dewormers. You have to clean your pastures. Find a way to do that.
This is a big topic, I can tell, and I'm probably not the one to take part, but it sounds like it could be a really interesting open discussion if we were to have such a thing in the future. For example, Michelle thinks papaya seeds as a dewormer is a great idea. Obviously, Michelle's an expert on papayas. I know nothing about them, but it sounds like that would be a really good idea. So maybe if people would like to have a conversation about that kind of on that subject, then let us know, and we'll try and arrange that for some point in the future. But you'll be documenting your work anyway, right, as usual?
Yeah, we will. And I have had, of course, during these, I've been here almost 6 years, I've had horses who had a problem with their foot, and they had been swollen. I mean, my horses have also been sick, right? And then all the time, I never used the vet to fix it. Yeah, so this is a very interesting subject. I'm not saying that you should not use the vet, okay? Just, don't hang me on that. But this is what I have done, because the vet is an hour and a half away, and he don't work every day. So we're forced to find other solutions and trust that other solutions could work. So in a way, I had no choice. So I think there's a way that we can integrate more of what could be naturally happening with the more modern veterinarian medicine, So I think there's more we can do to improve the health of our horses, and not to look to more ways. That's what I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, folks, well, we have come to the end of the call, and thanks very much for your participation and your questions and your comments. If you would like to hear more on this subject and perhaps have a future call, then do write in and let us know. Just the usual address, info@horseconscious.com. And if it's the first time you've heard of Stina's website, you've got a new website, haven't you? Which is?
I don't know. Find me on Facebook, Stina.Herberg. My name
I think it's Stina Herberg, if I pronounce that right, .wordpress.com, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you could go. Yeah, I have a WordPress.
Let me just check that now, because otherwise people will be racing off to find you and not doing so because I gave them the wrong address. So let me do that. It is. Come on, computer. Here we go. So, yoicks. Where is it? Oh, it's there. Yes. Oh, no, I have to look it up on YouTube now. There you go. Anyway, if you look on Facebook or on the facebook.com/HorseConscious, you can find it. And it's Stina Herberg. So it's StinaHerberg .wordpress.com. StinaHerberg.wordpress.com. I know I haven't pronounced that correctly, but I want to try and do it slightly phonetically. So anyway, thanks very much, Stina. I'm glad you suggested the call. It was great, and apologies to everyone for the delay in getting you online, but we managed it in the end. And yes, thanks for tuning in. Susan says that papaya is also a wonderful remedy for horses with ulcers.
Oh, good.
There you go. Exciting to follow your progress on this and the herb garden concept. So thanks, Susan.